mood is across a lot of global participants. Christopher Palmer of Benson Avenue Capital joins us now on the phone line all the way from London to discuss that. Christopher, good afternoon and thanks for joining us. Well, you know, a whole host of experts that we have spoken to believe that the best case scenario for global markets would be a divided House and a Clinton presidency. If that comes through, then how do you see equity markets react?
I think in the case of a split House and a Clinton presidency, the markets will react somewhat positively simply because some of the budget log jams that we've seen in the past when we have a divided government with the Republicans controlling both houses, some of that will go away, particularly if the Senate becomes controlled by the Democrats. So I think that would be a positive outcome for markets. I think just about any other scenario would be taken as a neutral to a net negative, simply because of the uncertainties of how a Clinton presidency would balance itself against a Republican Congress. So that's just one warning for the U.S. market, is that divided House is probably a best case scenario.
Okay, Christopher, hi, good to have you on the show. So do you get a sense that once this election is over and the market gets what it wants, divided House and of course Clinton win, then can the markets go back to the previous highs, the recent highs for the year, or do you think it will be a tough ask anyway?
I believe the market can move from these levels higher, simply because it's been marking time for so long. I mean, the market has been anticipating this election and the Fed, and those have been two drags on market sentiment. And I think as yesterday's market activity indicates, there is cash on the sidelines. There is a lot of pent-up demand to get involved in the U.S. market, particularly in innovation stories and the consumer, who is benefiting from this stronger economy in the U.S.
I wanted to ask you your thoughts on some sectors as well that could see an impact. You know, the pharmaceutical sector in the Indian markets is down about 1 to 2%. But in the US markets, we've seen a huge derating of the pharma sector purely because both candidates would want additional scrutiny as far as drug pricing is concerned, pricing control is concerned. How would you react to the pharmaceutical sector? Is it a lose-lose situation irrespective of who comes on board?
Well, I'd have to say, first of all, not all of the Indian stocks have been immune from this. I mean, bear in mind that the FDA has been bearing an enormous amount of pressure on the Indian pharmaceutical companies in terms of inspections and ramping up their scrutiny of these companies. So Indian generic pharmaceutical companies who've been selling into the United States have felt very much the same brunt of the force of the FDA and the U.S. federal government. Having said that, the U.S. pharmaceutical industry has been under tremendous pressure from the third candidate, and this is very important, is that Bernie Sanders has not gone away. He has become the unofficial spokesperson for the U.S. consumer with regards to overpricing of drugs. And I think that's where the biggest risk in the U.S. is for companies which have a high-priced drug, where they've been moving that price upwards very dramatically in recent years, taking advantage of Obamacare and other retirement plans to overprice drugs. And I think that's where the real risks are. However, as you've said, the market action's been terrible on these stocks for the last 6 to 8 months, and some of that is actually priced in. I've been around long enough to know from history that the last time Hillary Clinton approached the White House in the all the way back when her husband was the president, she also had this enormous impact on healthcare stocks before she entered the White House. And afterwards, everything was fine. I'm expecting that to happen again, and I think that there could be some tremendous bargains out there in U.S. healthcare stocks, but also in these Indian generic companies, which have been beaten down by these draconian FDA inspections.
Okay, Christopher, thanks a lot for your time today. So that's